Jon Snow stood in the great hall of Winterfell, his jaw tight as Lord Eddard Stark. His father, or so he thought, stared at him with deep, quiet eyes. "King Robert has requested a Stark to join his Kingsguard," Ned said, voice calm but heavy. "He wanted me. I refused." Jon blinked. "Then who?" "You," Ned answered. Jon stepped back. "Me? I'm a Snow." "A bastard," Robert insisted. "I don't know why, but he wants someone he can trust, someone who won't play politics like the Lannisters do." Ned paused, his voice softening. "Maybe he wants a reminder of the North, or maybe it's something else. But this is a great honor, Jon. You'd wear white armor, live in the Red Keep, protect the king." Jon didn't speak. His heart had always longed for purpose, something greater than being just a bastard. He'd once wanted to take the Black and guard the Wall. But this? The Kingsguard? "What about Robb?" he asked quietly. "Won't it look strange? A bastard guarding the king?" Ned looked away. "Robert doesn't care about such things. He sees bravery, loyalty." And I agreed. Jon nodded slowly. Maybe this was his path. By the end of the week, he rode south with the royal party, King Robert, Queen Cersei, Jaime Lannister, who had stepped down from the Kingsguard, a shock to all, and the royal children. Jon felt out of place. Sir Barristan Selmy gave him cold stares. Cersei whispered things when he passed. Prince Joffrey looked at him like dirt. Only King Robert treated him warmly, slapping him on the back, calling him Ned's boy, and pouring him wine. "You remind me of your father, boy," Robert said once, half drunk, "but you've got that look in your eye, like you see too much." In the Red Keep, Jon trained hard. Sir Barristan tested him daily, and slowly the other guards began to respect him. But it was a lonely life. No family, no friends. Then the whispers started. Why would Robert choose a bastard from the North? Is he just a Stark pawn? Some say he's more than Ned's son. Some say he's a Targaryen. Jon ignored it, but the name Targaryen rang in his ears like thunder. One night, while guarding outside the small council chamber, Jon overheard something that changed everything. Inside, Robert shouted, "I want them all dead. Viserys, Daenerys, I don't care. I won't have dragon spawn returning." Jon stood stiff. "Dragons? Targaryens?" Littlefinger's voice followed, calm and oily. "We can arrange it, but your new Kingsguard, he looks too much like Rhaegar." Silence. Then Cersei spoke. "Maybe Ned sent him for more than guarding. Maybe to watch, or worse, to betray." Jon's chest tightened. The next day, Ned Stark arrived in King's Landing. Robert had named him Hand of the King. Jon felt hope. Finally, someone familiar. But Ned looked tired, distant. He pulled Jon aside. "I need you to watch the Queen," Ned whispered. "And her children. There are things going on. Things I can't say yet." Jon nodded. Days turned to weeks. He watched. He listened. He noticed how the Queen and Jaime shared glances that weren't brotherly. He saw how Prince Joffrey didn't look anything like Robert. He began to piece it together. One evening he asked Ned quietly, "Is Joffrey really the king's son?" Ned looked at him sharply. Then, without answering, he sighed. "Jon, there are secrets that can kill us all. Just be careful." But Jon couldn't stop thinking. Could a lie this big sit on the Iron Throne? And in the shadows, Varys the Spider approached him too. "You're not just a Snow, are you?" he said softly. "You look too much like someone else, like a prince long dead." Jon's heart pounded. "Who?" But Varys only smiled and walked away. Jon Snow had never felt more watched. The Red Keep, with all its stone walls and golden banners, seemed to have 1,000 eyes, some seen, many hidden. Whispers followed him like shadows. Servants would fall silent when he entered a room. Gold cloaks eyed him with suspicion. Even the other Kingsguard seemed unsure of him. But the strangest stares came from the Queen. Cersei Lannister wore her beauty like armor, cold and sharp. She would pass him in the halls with a lingering look, not flirtatious but calculating, as if trying to see beneath his skin. One afternoon, while Jon stood guard outside the royal solar, she stepped out alone. No guards, no maids, just her. "You're always so still," she said, circling him like a lioness. "Starks don't usually survive long here. You're lucky the king likes you." Jon didn't respond. Cersei tilted her head. "Do you know what happened to the last person who reminded Robert of Lyanna Stark?" Jon's jaw tightened. "He beat her, he drank, he cursed the gods for not making her you." She smirked. "So be careful, Jon Snow. The king's love burns out quickly and turns into rage." She left without waiting for an answer. Later that night, Jon found himself summoned to Robert's private chambers. The king sat alone, drunk again. The wine spilled down his beard. The fire crackled, casting shadows across his broad face. "Come in, boy," Robert grunted. "Sit." Jon sat stiffly. "You know, I've had too many people lie to me. Littlefinger, Pycelle, even your father." He looked at Jon with glassy eyes. "But I trust you. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do." Jon didn't know what to say. Robert leaned in. "What do you think of my son?" "Joffrey." Jon hesitated. "He's sharp, proud." Robert laughed bitterly. "Proud? That boy's a snake with a lion's smile, and he doesn't have a drop of my blood." Jon stiffened. "I never told anyone that," Robert murmured. "Not even Ned. But I see it. He's no son of mine, and I'll be damned if I let a Lannister whelp sit on my throne." Jon's mouth felt dry. "What will you do?" Robert's eyes darkened. "That's why I need people like you. Someone to protect me when the vipers strike." Then he whispered something that chilled Jon's blood. "If I die, burn them all. Cersei, Jaime, the boy, all of them." Jon froze. "That's not justice. It's war," Robert growled. "And you'll have to choose sides, bastard or not." When Jon returned to his quarters, his heart thundered. Everything was spinning out of control. The king feared his own queen. Ned was hiding secrets. And Jon, just a snow from the north, was now tangled in a web of power, lies, and blood. A week later, everything exploded. Jon was posted near the royal stables when a raven arrived, flapping wildly with black wings. The message went straight to Ned Stark's hands. Jon watched his father's face go pale. The seal was from Dragonstone. "Viserys Targaryen is dead," Ned muttered under his breath. "Killed by his own men. Daenerys is pregnant." Jon blinked. "She's alive?" "Yes. And Robert will want her dead next." Ned looked at Jon, something deeper than fatherly concern in his eyes. "If the Targaryens have a child, the realm could burn again. Robert won't rest until every dragon is dead." That night, Jon wandered the dark corridors of the Red Keep, lost in thought. That's when he found Varys waiting in the shadows again. "You should know something, Sir Jon," the spider whispered. "Daenerys Stormborn, she is not your enemy." Jon narrowed his eyes. "What are you saying?" Varys leaned in. "I'm saying the blood in your veins might be closer to hers than you think." Jon's world tilted. Before he could speak, the bells rang out across King's Landing. King Robert was dead. The Red Keep had never been so silent. Jon stood near the Iron Throne as the bells finished tolling, slow, heavy, and final. King Robert Baratheon was dead. The halls filled quickly with whispers and hurried footsteps. Lords and servants moved like rats after a fire. Everyone had the same question: who would rule now? Cersei wasted no time. That very night, she summoned the small council. Jon wasn't invited, but Sir Barristan pulled him aside. "You should be there," Barristan said. Robert trusted you more than anyone. I saw it. And with Jaime gone, you're the only Kingsguard without Lannister blood." Jon hesitated. He wasn't a lord. He wasn't even a true Stark. But something inside him told him this was bigger than him now. So he followed Barristan into the council chamber. Inside, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a dagger. Cersei sat at the head, wearing black. Joffrey stood beside her, dressed in red and gold, smug and cold. Littlefinger lounged in his chair, smirking. Varys stood quiet in the shadows. Grand Maester Pycelle nodded with fake sorrow. And Ned Stark, Jon's father, stood alone, eyes cold as northern ice. "My son is king now," Cersei declared, voice sharp. "He will sit the Iron Throne as Robert's heir." Ned's jaw clenched. Robert's true heir is not Joffrey. The air froze. Even Jon stopped breathing. "You dare," Cersei whispered. Ned placed a parchment on the table. Robert named Lord Stannis his successor. It's written in his own hand. Joffrey's face twisted. "I am the king." Cersei's voice turned deadly. "Guards, seize him." But it was too late. Jon had already drawn his sword. For a moment everyone just stared. A bastard of the north, standing between a queen and her stolen throne. "You'll have to go through me," Jon said quietly. "Traitor," Joffrey spat. But Barristan Selmy stepped forward, drawing his blade too. "He is no traitor. He is Kingsguard, and this boy is not the king." Chaos erupted. Lannister guards stormed in. Blades clashed. Blood spilled across marble floors. Ned tried to escape, but Littlefinger grabbed him by the throat. "You shouldn't have trusted me," he whispered. Jon fought like a storm. He cut down 2 men before a spear cracked across his side. Pain exploded, but he stayed standing. Barristan was beside him, holding the line. Then Ned was dragged away, bleeding. And Jon? He was thrown into the black cells beneath the Red Keep. The cells stank of rot and mold. Jon's side throbbed with pain, and his thoughts were a whirlpool of rage and guilt. He had failed. Robert was dead. Ned was captured. Joffrey now sat on the Iron Throne. But worse than all that were the words echoing in his mind. "The blood in your veins might be closer to hers than you think." Was it true? Was he more than just a Snow? Days passed, maybe weeks. Jon lost count. Until one night, a torch flickered outside his cell. It was Varys. "You have many enemies now," the spider said softly, "but you also have value." Jon rose, weak but alert. "Why are you here?" "Because the game is not over. You are a piece still in play." "Joffrey is a false king," Jon growled. "He murdered my father." "Not yet," Varys said, "but soon." Jon's fists clenched. "I can get you out," Varys offered, "but you must promise one thing." "What?" "When the time comes, you will choose the realm, not revenge." Jon didn't answer. He didn't know if he could. But Varys unlocked the cell anyway. That night, Jon Snow disappeared from the Red Keep like a ghost. Disguised as a common thief, he slipped through alleys and sewers until the city disappeared behind him. The stars above were cold and distant, just like the road ahead. He didn't know where to go. Not to Winterfell. He would bring death to them. Not to the wall he had sworn no vows. Then he remembered Varys's words, and something else. A name, Daenerys. If the throne was to burn, maybe she held the match. And if Jon was more than just a Snow, maybe the fire lived inside him too. The road to Essos was long, but for Jon Snow, it felt like walking out of one world and into another. He had never left Westeros before. The air felt different. The colors were sharper, the people louder. He traveled under a false name, Aaron Rivers, a sellsword from the Riverlands, and kept his sword hidden. The world thought Jon Snow was dead or imprisoned. That was good. Let them believe it. He took a ship from Lys, heading toward the city of Karth, where whispers said Daenerys Targaryen had last been seen. Whispers also said she had dragons. At night, Jon would lie awake in the ship's lower deck, staring at the wooden beams above him, hearing the sea crash around him. Varys's words never left his mind. "You are not just a snow. The blood in your veins might be closer to hers than you think." Was it true? He remembered how Robert looked at him like a ghost, how Cersei stared with quiet hatred, how Ned never looked him in the eye when he asked about his mother. Now he knew there had been too many signs. He was not Ned's son, not truly. But if not a Stark, then what was he? When Jon finally arrived in Qarth, the heat hit him like a hammer. The city was strange towers of glass, walls of bright color, people dressed in silks and gold. But even here, her name carried weight. Daenerys Stormborn, breaker of chains, mother of dragons. People spoke her name with awe and fear. They said she had left Qarth months ago, sailed east, deeper into the unknown lands of Slaver's Bay. But one merchant had seen her. She had 3 dragons, the old man whispered, his eyes wide with memory. One black as night, one green as the forest, one gold as fire. They followed her like children. Jon felt something stir deep in his chest, a strange warmth, like a memory he never had. He bought a horse and rode east. Weeks passed, town after town. He saw the ruins she had left behind, slave cities burned to ash, masters crucified on walls, freed men singing her name. But the closer he got, the more complicated the stories became. "She freed us," one man said, "but then she left, and the old powers returned." "She was a conqueror, not a queen," said another. "Fire doesn't rule, it destroys." And then Jon saw Meereen. The great pyramid rose like a mountain, the city sprawling around it. The walls were cracked from battle. The people walked with fear in their eyes. He slipped in unnoticed, just another foreign face in a city full of chaos. And there, in the shadow of the pyramid, he saw her. Daenerys. She was thinner than he expected, her hair pale silver, her dress simple, her face tired, but her eyes burned with something ancient. Jon couldn't speak. He didn't know how to approach a woman who might be his cousin or his queen. So he followed her, watched her, and then one day he saw something that made his blood run cold. Tyrion Lannister. He walked beside her like a trusted advisor, the same man who had once betrayed Jon's father, who had laughed in Winterfell's halls. Jon's grip tightened on his sword. But before he could act, a voice spoke behind him. "She will not listen to you if you come with steel." Jon spun around. It was Jorah Mormont. "You're Jon Snow," Jorah said quietly. "Ned Stark's boy. Or so we thought." Jon stared at him. "You knew? I fought beside your uncle. I knew your father well. And I saw your face the moment you looked at her. You carry the same blood." Jon's voice dropped. "What am I?" Jorah sighed. "You're the last piece of a broken line. The child who was hidden so he wouldn't burn." Jon looked toward the pyramid. "I need to speak with her." "You will," Jorah said. "But not as a bastard. Not as a sword. You must go to her as you truly are." Jon stepped forward. "And who is that?" Jorah met his eyes. "Jon Targaryen." The wind was hot atop the pyramid of Meereen, carrying with it the scent of smoke, salt, and something else, fire. Jon Snow stood at the steps of the Grand Hall, his sword left behind, his cloak removed. He wore simple, dark clothes, nothing royal, nothing northern, just a man, just the truth. The Unsullied lined the halls, still as statues. Missandei stood near the throne, and beside it, in shadowed gold and red, sat Daenerys Targaryen. She studied him like a hawk. Her silver hair was braided in Valyrian style. Her eyes were wide, unreadable. "You traveled across the narrow sea to meet me," she said calmly. "Why?" Jon's voice was steady. Because the world is dying, and you may be the only one who can stop it. Tyrion stood nearby, arms crossed. He looked amused but curious. And who exactly are you? Jon paused. The truth sat heavy on his tongue. For years, he had been Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell, a shadow in the hall, an outsider. But now, it was time to stop hiding. I was raised as Ned Stark's son, but I am not his. Daenerys's brows drew together slightly. My real name, my blood, comes from Rhaegar Targaryen. Silence fell like a blade. Tyrion blinked. Missandei gasped. Even Daenerys leaned forward slightly. Jon continued, My mother was Lyanna Stark. My father was your brother. Daenerys's expression darkened. That's not possible. My brother's child died during the rebellion. No, Jon said. He was hidden. Ned Stark kept his promise. He raised me in the north to protect me from Robert Baratheon's hatred. Tyrion finally spoke, slowly. That would make you, Jon nodded, Aegon Targaryen, son of the Dragon Prince, and your nephew? The room went quiet again. Daenerys stood, stepping down from her throne. Her face was unreadable, no joy, no sorrow. Just cold calculation. Why come now? She asked. Because I don't want the Iron Throne, Jon said. But someone must sit on it who isn't made of lies and cruelty, and the people in Westeros, they're suffering. Under Cersei, under false kings. My father, Ned Stark, died trying to reveal the truth. I won't let his death be for nothing. Daenerys studied him. She circled slowly, her voice sharp. And you expect me to believe this? That you're a prince lost to time? You arrive here with nothing but words. Jon looked her in the eyes. I brought something else. He pulled a folded parchment from his coat, Robert Baratheon's will, the one Ned had tried to use to save the realm. It bore Robert's seal, still cracked from the day it was torn from Ned's hands. Tyrion took it first, scanning it quickly. His eyes widened. This name's Stannis as heir, Tyrion murmured. Not Joffrey, not Tommen, not any of the Lannister children. Daenerys took it next, silent. Her eyes moved across the ink like fire catching on dry wood. And you fought for the man who wrote this? She asked. I defended him with my sword, Jon said, until his own queen tried to have me killed. My father was arrested, the crown passed to Joffrey, and I was thrown into the black cells. She stopped. How did you escape? Varys helped me. Tyrion raised an eyebrow. The spider? Now that's curious. Daenerys turned back to Jon, her tone softer now. You've come with nothing but your name, a parchment, and your past, yet I believe you. Jon didn't flinch. But belief isn't enough, she said. If you are truly Targaryen, then you must face the fire. Jon blinked. What? She stepped aside, and from behind the throne, Drogon appeared. The black dragon was huge now, wings like sails, eyes like molten gold. His breath steamed the floor, his snarl shook the walls. Jon instinctively reached for a sword he didn't have. Daenerys raised her hand. Stand still. Drogon came close, his nose inches from Jon's chest. The heat was unbearable. Jon's skin felt like it might melt. The beast sniffed. Then Drogon blinked. He lowered his head, and he bowed. Gasps echoed across the hall. Daenerys stared, stunned. No man had ever stood before Drogon like that, not without being eaten alive. Fire does not burn dragon's blood, she whispered. You are one of us. Jon exhaled slowly, and for the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged. That night, Jon stood alone on the balcony of Daenerys's pyramid, staring out over Meereen's dark rooftops. Fires flickered in the distance, tiny lights compared to the storm now burning inside him. Aegon Targaryen. It still didn't feel real. His entire life he had been Jon Snow, a bastard. Now he was dragon blood, royal blood, heir to the very throne that had destroyed so many lives. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. "You're not sleeping either," Daenerys said, her voice softer than he'd heard it before. Jon turned. "Hard to sleep when everything you thought you were is a lie." She nodded. "I know that feeling." They stood together for a moment, two shadows lit by moonlight, two last survivors of a dead dynasty. "When I first lost my brother Rhaegar," she said, "I hated Robert. I thought Rhaegar had stolen Lyanna, killed children, started a war for nothing. But now," she looked at him with something between wonder and sorrow, "you were the reason he did it. He loved her. He tried to protect you." Jon swallowed. "I never knew him." "You have his eyes," she said, "and his quiet fire." Jon turned back to the city. "So what now?" "You came for me," she said, "but I don't know if you came as an ally or as a rival." That hit him like a blade. "I don't want your throne," Jon said. "I want to stop Cersei. She murdered my father. She lied, she cheated, she burned the realm down to sit in a chair made of swords. If we don't fight her, she'll rule forever." Daenerys stepped closer, her voice tightening. "I've been planning to return to Westeros for years. I've freed cities, commanded armies, raised dragons, but I've never met someone who could truly share the fire with me. Until now." Jon looked at her, confused. She placed her hand gently on his chest. "You're not just Targaryen, you're fire and ice, Stark and dragon. You could rule." "I don't want to rule," Jon said firmly. "I just want to make sure no child has to grow up in fear of lions and crowns and monsters hiding in palaces." A smile touched her lips. "Then maybe that's why you should." Before he could answer, loud footsteps rushed up the stairs. Grey Worm appeared, face grim. "My queen," he said. "A ship has arrived from Westeros. A raven was sent ahead. The message bears the sigil of House Stark." Jon's heart jumped. "Who sent it?" he asked. Grey Worm hesitated. "Sansa Stark." Daenerys gave Jon a questioning look. "She's my sister," Jon said. "Or cousin, I guess." Grey Worm handed him the scroll. Jon opened it. As he read, his face went pale. "Robb Stark is dead. The Boltons hold Winterfell. They wear your father's face on their banners. The North bleeds, and they call it justice. If you're alive, we need you." His hands trembled. Daenerys stepped forward. "What does it say?" Jon didn't answer right away. His mouth was dry, eyes burning. "They killed Robb. The Boltons have Winterfell. They're flaying Northerners, flying Stark skins like trophies." Daenerys's face turned cold. "That's the same house that betrayed your brother at the Red Wedding?" Jon nodded. She turned to Grey Worm. "Ready the fleet. We sail for Westeros." Jon looked at her, surprised. "You'd come with me? To the north?" Daenerys met his gaze. "The north is part of the realm. If your people are suffering, then they are my people too." Jon blinked, unsure whether it was loyalty, ambition, or something else in her voice. But in that moment, it didn't matter. They had a common enemy. And Winterfell was calling. 2 weeks later, the Targaryen fleet sailed from Meereen. Over 50 ships cut through black waves, dragons soared above the masts, and banners flapped in the wind. Jon stood on the prow, hair flying, eyes locked on the western horizon. His heart burned with rage, grief, and something more dangerous purpose. He was no longer a bastard, no longer a forgotten shadow, and the wolves of the north had been hunted for too long. Now they would howl again, with fire at their back. The winds howled cold as the Targaryen fleet approached Westeros, but Jon Snow didn't feel it. He stood at the bow of the lead ship, eyes locked on the fading mist ahead, where grey cliffs slowly emerged the north, his home. But it wasn't the same place he had left. The Bolton banners now flew over Winterfell, red-flayed men, grotesque and proud. They had butchered Robb, betrayed his name, skinned his bannermen, and claimed his castle like carrion birds feasting on a dead wolf. Jon's hands clenched the rail until his knuckles turned white. This wasn't just war. This was vengeance. Daenerys joined him on the deck, her silver hair tied tightly behind her head, her dragons circling above like shadows with wings. Drogon let out a low, rumbling growl that echoed across the sea like thunder. "You're quiet," she said. Jon nodded. "Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. Robb. He was more than my brother. He was the North's last hope." Daenerys looked ahead. "Then we'll make sure the Boltons remember him when we tear their house down." Jon glanced at her. "You don't have to do this. The Iron Throne—" "Can wait," she interrupted. "Right now your fight is mine. The people of the North won't follow a foreign queen, but they might follow a Stark." Jon looked away. "I'm not a Stark. You are to them." When the ships landed on the stony shores near White Harbor, the Targaryen banners stayed furled. Jon rode ahead alone under the direwolf sigil, hooded, cloaked, and unarmed. A risk, but a necessary one. White Harbor's gates opened slowly. He was met by Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, now serving as Sansa's protector. Davos's eyes widened. "7 hells! Jon Snow?" Jon dismounted. "In the flesh." They clasped forearms tightly. "I thought you were dead," Davos said, still staring. "Sansa, she's been trying to hold the North together. But the Boltons. They've crushed almost every house loyal to the Starks." Jon's face darkened. "Not for long." They rode through White Harbor at nightfall, and when Jon entered the great hall of House Manderley, his eyes finally landed on her. Sansa. She rose from the long table, her red hair braided in the northern style, her eyes older than her years. Neither of them spoke. Then, without a word, Sansa crossed the hall and embraced him tightly. "I thought I'd never see you again," she whispered, her voice cracking. Jon held her, like he was holding on to the last piece of his soul. "You're safe," he murmured. "That's all I care about." She pulled back, tears in her eyes. "You look different." "I am," he said. "And I've brought help." Later that night, around a small war table, Sansa, Davos, and Jon spoke in whispers. Jon laid out the plan. Daenerys' forces would march through the Neck while the dragons flew over the Dreadfort. He would lead the charge on Winterfell. "They won't expect it," Jon said. "They think I'm dead. They think they've won." Sansa's expression hardened. "They don't know the North remembers." Jon nodded. "But if we fail—" "We won't," Sansa said. "I've waited too long to take Winterfell back. I've bled for this. I've endured them. Now they'll feel what it means to cross a Stark." Jon looked at her, pride swelling in his chest. His sister, no. His cousin was no longer a bird in a cage. She was steel now, quiet and sharp. That night, as Daenerys' fleet landed in secret and the dragons took to the sky, the North began to wake. Ravens were sent. Old banners were found and dusted off. The sigils of House Mormont, House Serwyn, House Hornwood, and even a few old Karstark men began to stir. The Boltons ruled through fear, but the North remembered, and Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, was back. As dawn broke, Jon stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the snowy plains before Winterfell. The great castle loomed in the distance, its walls high and black, its gates stained with Stark blood. Beside him, Daenerys rode up on a white horse, dressed in armor, her dragons circling high above. "This is your home," she said. Jon nodded. "And I'm going to take it back." Then he drew his sword. Longclaw, the same blade he once carried as a Snow. Now he raised it not just for vengeance, but for justice. Snow began to fall as the army of the North formed on the white fields before Winterfell. Jon Snow sat atop his black horse, Longclaw strapped to his side, the direwolf sigil of House Stark stitched onto his chest. Around him stood those who still remembered the old ways, the broken bannermen who had bent the knee once to Robb Stark and had come now to fight for his memory. But behind Jon stood something far greater. 3 dragons, circling in the grey sky above like shadows of ancient doom. At his side, Daenerys rode silently, her eyes fixed on the black walls of Winterfell. Her silver hair whipped in the wind, and her voice was low when she finally spoke. "This will not be a siege," she said. "We burn them out, or we die trying." Jon's eyes didn't leave the castle. "Ramsay Bolton flays his prisoners, women, children. He wears my brother's crown like a joke. And he's about to choke on it," Daenerys replied. The horns blew. The first charge began. Jon led the northern cavalry straight into the teeth of the Bolton army. Arrows rained down, swords clashed, and screams filled the air. But Jon fought like a man possessed, cutting through Bolton, men like a ghost from the crypts of Winterfell, Longclaw flashing in the snow. From above, Drogon swooped, letting out a wall of flame that melted the enemy's flanks. Rhaegal and Viserion followed, setting siege towers ablaze, their roars shaking the heavens. The Bolton army broke like water. But Ramsay Bolton was not on the battlefield. He was in the gatehouse watching, smirking, his eyes gleaming with madness. "Let them in," he said calmly. "Then close the gates behind them." The moment Jon's forces breached the walls, the trap was sprung. Archers on the inner walls began firing down not just on Daenerys's unsullied, but on their own Bolton men too. The courtyard became a killing pit. Jon barely dodged a falling volley. "They're trying to seal us in," he yelled. "Push to the Great Hall." Daenerys was already off her horse, leading her guards forward, her eyes wild with fury. Grey Worm cut a path through the chaos, leading her through blood and fire. And then the castle trembled. The dragons had landed. Drogon crushed the main gates with one strike of his massive tail. Rhaegal torched the west tower. Viserion screeched and dove into the inner yard, scattering men like leaves. Jon climbed the broken steps of the Great Hall, cutting down the last of the Bolton guards, until he stood face to face with him. Ramsay Bolton. He was smiling. "Look what crawled home," Ramsay said softly, loading a crossbow. "The bastard of Winterfell, come to beg for his father's bones?" Jon didn't speak. He just walked forward. Ramsay fired. Jon twisted. The bolt grazed his arm, but he kept coming. Another shot. This one missed. Ramsay cursed and dropped the bow, drawing his blade. But it didn't matter. Jon smashed into him like a storm. They fought in the snow, swords clashing, fists slamming into faces. Ramsay was quick, cruel, dirty, but Jon was stronger and filled with rage. When Ramsay's blade finally slipped from his hand, Jon tackled him to the ground and beat him until blood painted the snow. Every punch was for Robb, for Catelyn, for Rickon, for all the North had lost. When Jon finally stopped, Ramsay's face was pulp. He looked up and saw Sansa, standing at the edge of the hall. She walked forward slowly, her eyes locked on the broken man wheezing in the snow. "Keep him alive," she said to Jon. "Just for now." Jon nodded, breathless. Later, Ramsay was dragged to the same kennels where he had once fed women to his hounds. Sansa stood outside, face blank, as his screams echoed behind her. Winterfell was reclaimed. The Bolton banners were torn down, and the direwolf flew once more above the towers. As the fires died and dawn broke over the snow-covered land, Jon stood in the courtyard, bloodied but alive. Daenerys came to stand beside him. "You fought like a Targaryen," she said softly. Jon looked toward the north and said, "I fought like a Stark." And in that quiet moment, with dragons perched on the towers and wolves howling in the wind, the North remembered. But deep down, Jon knew this was just the beginning. The real war was still coming, and it would not be for Winterfell. It would be for the soul of Westeros.